Okay, we're going to talk about how to read a dial caliper this time. I've got us a standard plain Jane dial caliper here. This is a 0 to 6 inch dial caliper, so it ends at 6 inches there. And we'll start by talking about how we read it, and then we'll go through an example of how we use it. So I'll open it up here so you can see a few inches at a time. And if we look closely at the numbering, you can see that we have a tall line, then we have 9 short lines, and then another tall line, and then another 9 short lines, and so on. So the tall lines with the numbers are inches, so 0 inches, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. The short lines, like this one right here next to my thumb, is 100 thousandths. Then we got 200 thousandths, 300 thousandths, 400 thousandths, etc. Otherwise known as 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 inches, so on and so forth. And then if I close this back up, you can see we have our dial. Our dial has 100 divisions on it, each one being worth 1/1000th of an inch. So every time I move this slide with the dial on it from 1/100,000th space, like right here, I'll see if I can get it right on the 5. Touchy. Okay, so right here I'm pretty much right on the 5 for 500 thousandths, or a half an inch, and I will make this one revolution. And now I'm on the 6 for 600 thousandths. So the dial just traveled 100 thousandths and my slide moved 100 thousandths. So to actually take our reading with the dial caliper, I'm going to take my blade reading, which is right at the edge of my slide here, and then I add my dial reading to it. So if I just open this up to a random point and stop it, we can see that the blade reading here is 2.1, and then the dial reading. We can see part of the 2, but since I can't see the line, I can't count it. Also, if you take a look at the needle, it's to the left of the 0, which means that we're just before the 2 line there. So 2.1 plus 77. Notice how the needle is kind of in between the 2 numbers. Just like with the micrometer, we're going to pick the lower number, the lower whole number. So this would be 2.177 inches, or 2 and 177 thousandths of an inch. Now when we use it, a couple more things that we need to know. First, we want to always make sure that the dial caliper zeroes out. And to do that, I'm going to open up the jaws and I'm going to wipe the inside edges of the outside jaws, which are these 2 jaws here. Make sure that they're clean so that when I close it, it actually zeroes. If I do that and the needle is not sitting on the 0, then we need to loosen this lock knob and adjust the face so that it is 0, and then gently tighten the lock knob. You don't have to over tighten it. You also don't have to unscrew it all the way in order to make that adjustment. Once we've got that good, now that we know that these are outside jaws, these are my inside jaws, and then down here is my depth gauge. So the nice thing about these dial calipers is I could take multiple different types of measurements, unlike the micrometer. You'll note that when I have it fully closed, this portion of the outside jaws touch each other, but then we have a portion here where they don't actually touch. Whenever we're taking measurements with the outside jaws on this dial caliper, we need to make sure that we're using the right portion of the outside jaws. And then I'm going to use my thumb wheel here to move it. So when I roll it back, it opens up, and then when I push it forward, if I put my finger in there, it'll tighten up, but once I reach the proper amount of tightness, the thumb wheel slips. That prevents me from over tightening the dial caliper and damaging the gear mechanism in the dial caliper, as well as potentially damaging my parts. And so we want to make use of that. So I've got a camshaft here, and we're going to go ahead and measure the cam lobe height, okay? Because the lobe is not completely round. We're going to go ahead and measure the high point of the nose of the cam lobe with the dial caliper here. So I'm going to turn this sideways so I can hold it. And now that I know that my dial caliper zeroes out and the insides of the outside jaws are clean, I'm going to go ahead and open them up, place it around what I'm going to measure, and just like with the micrometer, I want to rock it back and forth and make sure that I've got the jaws flat on my part and I've got my largest diameter or dimension here. So I rock it a little bit in order to get that. And then I want to keep just a little bit of tension on that thumb wheel while I take my reading. Because you can see, as soon as I let off the thumb wheel, the needle moves out a couple thousandths, and now this becomes really loose. So to get an accurate reading, I need to keep a little bit of tension on there. So if we take a look, I'm right at the 1 inch mark for a blade reading, and my needle's right on the 2, as in 2 thousandths. So my intake cam lobe height is 1 2 thousandths of an inch, or 1.002 inches. Okay? And that little bit of needle movement when you're varying the pressure on the thumb wheel is where the dial caliper is a little bit trickier to use versus a micrometer when it comes to getting accurate and consistent results. That's why the micrometer is typically preferred when we are doing this type of engine work. However, there are a few occasions in which the dial caliper is pretty suitable. For example, the cam lobe height, we're just kind of checking to see if there's been any major wear that's occurred to the nose of the cam lobe here. Obviously it looks pretty good. There's not much of a wear in there. This isn't something that we could really touch up by hand or have a machine here at school to address anyway. So more of a confirmation check that it hasn't been totally scrubbed down. Anyways, enough about the cam. Any questions about the dial caliper and how it's used or read? Find me in the shop or communicate with me some other way. And thanks for watching.